So I'm sure everyone is aware by now that the new Switch 2 is coming out, and with the new Switch 2 there will almost certainly be a new 3D Mario game. If not at launch, but likely in the first year. And it's been almost 8 years since Mario Odyssey, the longest time between a major Mario release ever. So to say there is hype is a pretty big understatement, and because of this I wanted to make a wish list of sorts of what I wanted to see in the next Mario game, and what they could improve on from Mario Odyssey and Bowser's Fury. And hopefully some of the ideas come true, but probably none of them will come true, but I'm doing it anyway. Starting with the first thing I want to see, which is more new bosses. Now Mario Galaxy, my favourite Mario game, is probably the king of Mario bosses, with like 40 unique bosses, and Galaxy 2 isn't far off. Unfortunately, after that they kinda gave up on cool bosses, with 3D Land having the same Boom Boom and Pom Pom over and over again. It was a bit better in 3D World with some new bosses, like the cat guy and the big ass thingy. But for Odyssey I was expecting a lot more than what we got, considering it was meant to be like Galaxy. But most of the bosses were heavily repeated, with the rabbits repeating multiple times. And they weren't even that great to fight to begin with. There were some other cool bosses as well, like the Stone Face boss, the UFO one and the Dragon boss. But they could have had a lot more. Part of the lack of bosses is due to the collectible nature of Odyssey, with it focusing on overworld gameplay over missions, which brings me to my next thing. Significantly more missions. Like Galaxy with the bosses, I felt like the 3-star structure worked well, and they also had extra stars that you could find in the level, which gave it a nice balance between missions and collectibles in the overworld. In Galaxy 2 it focused a bit too much on just getting through the level, and the levels are a lot less expansive and linear. But Odyssey focused way too heavily on collecting and barely offered any missions. In fact, some levels had like one mission and that was it. A big part of what makes the levels interesting is you doing different things in them and finding unique areas that can only be found in the missions. But that barely happens in Odyssey. New Donk City is probably the best example of it done well, with you going into the underground section, and then the new Donkey Kong City celebration with the Donkey Kong minigame. But even that is super short, with it only lasting a couple of missions. If all the levels were like New Donk and had even more missions instead of random moons, I would much prefer that. And speaking of random moons, Mario Odyssey has a lot of them, so in the next Mario they should cut down on all the pointless filler content. Nintendo has this big habit of adding massive pointless filler, like the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild, and some of the moons in Odyssey. We do not need to get a moon by looking at a taxi or ground pounding a random spot on the ground to get a moon. There are so many moons that could be removed with zero change to the gameplay, and it would make the game a lot more enjoyable to 100%. And speaking of 100%, I would like it if this game, unlike Odyssey, let you get more of the moons or whatever comes next a lot sooner, instead of requiring you to beat the entire game to unlock a lot of the content. This wasn't an issue in the earlier 3D Marios, with them giving you most of the missions as soon as you entered the level, with the exception being the purple coins in Galaxy and World S in Galaxy 2. But that was a far smaller amount of content compared to Odyssey, which had so much content locked behind beating the game, making it feel more pointless to do since you aren't going towards an actual goal. Another thing I would like to see come back from previous Mario games is space levels, or at least levels that looked like they are on planets. Mario Galaxy levels were unique in the way they could change their location, and due to them being based on planets, it made them much more easy to feel unique, since they could pretty much be made into any location, along with the gravity mechanic making it play very differently. I would like to see this gameplay come back in some form. Galaxy's planet system really brought variety that you just can't get from a flat level, and they had way more galaxies than Odyssey due to them being smaller in size. Which is my next request: make smaller levels. There are a few small levels in Odyssey, like the Lake Kingdom, but most were way too big, and because of that they focused way too much on them and they became stale very quickly. I want more smaller levels with a bigger variety of themes. Instead of giving us bland desert levels or swamp levels, get more interesting. Obviously I don't want it to be like 3D World, where the levels are so simple and short, which makes them forgettable. But I do want something more than the basic general levels, like the desert or sand or whatever the hell. Just give us something we've never seen before. Now probably the biggest request I have, which is a big issue that I had with Odyssey, is the music. The music in most Mario games is amazing, especially Galaxy, which is probably my favourite soundtrack ever. But Odyssey's music just kinda sucks. A lot of it just doesn't fit the area, like having the anime music at the end of the game. And some of it is just really bland and boring. Some of the tracks I thought was good, like the Lake Kingdom theme, but it was a massive step down from 3D World and Galaxy, with there not really being any standout tracks. It was so bad I didn't even bother getting the soundtrack. For the next Mario game, I hope they get their original composers like Koji Kondo, Mahito Yokota, Ryo Nagamatsu, all the good composers that made music for Mario Galaxy and 3D World, to make music for the next game. And also not have any more anime music, because it really doesn't fit Mario, and I don't know what they were thinking. The other thing I don't think really fits Mario of Odyssey is the graphics. I think everyone can agree that 3D World looks amazing, with levels like Spooky Seasick Wreck really showing what the Wii U was capable of, with having crazy wet reflections and dark atmospheric lighting. Along with the overall designs of the levels being colourful, it's probably my favourite Mario game visually. Of course, it's a lot easier to make a game with limited scope like 3D World look good, as the levels are a lot smaller and easier to focus on. But even with that said, Odyssey in an artistic sense still is a massive step back, with them using much more lifeless, desaturated designs for the worlds. The worlds in Odyssey just look more lifeless due to how lacking they are in colours compared to 3D World. There are some levels like Sunshine Kingdom that look pretty nice to look at, but then you have stuff like Bowser's Kingdom and the Sand Kingdom, which are very mute in how vibrant they are, because of how they are going for a more realistic approach with its dark lighting instead of a much more vibrant system like in previous Mario games. I hope for the next 3D Mario they focus on making it more simple and colourful, instead of trying to make it all realistic and colourless. Now when the Wii came out, many people were annoyed about having to shake the controller to do things. And unfortunately when the Switch came out, Nintendo took what they did in Galaxy, but somehow made it even worse by making you shake the controller all the time to do things. If you want to roll faster, shake, climb higher, shake, move Cappy around, shake in a circle. I don't know why they force you to get tendinitis in order to play these games. For the next Mario game, just let me press a button instead of shaking. Yes, it's only if you want to go faster, but why the fuck would you not want to go faster? If there is an option to make things less tedious, people will want to do that. Except for the fact it doesn't make it less tedious because of the shaking. At least in Galaxy you only have to do it a couple times. With Odyssey, it's repeated every single time you roll or climb up a tree or anything that revolves around it. In Mario Odyssey, the big feature was the capture ability. Similar to Kirby, once you grab onto an enemy, you could become the enemy and controller. However, a lot of these characters that you could control didn't do much and didn't really have too much of a use. So for the next Mario game, I would like them to go back to power-ups and have some new interesting and unique power-ups. In Mario Galaxy, they get the bee suit, and the cloud suit, and the digging suit thing, which are all interesting and changed the gameplay. I would like new power-ups to change the gameplay like that, instead of just being able to use randomly for 1 second without no real thought or use. Now, I've talked a lot about things I want them to improve or add, but how about things I want them to keep? Well, the biggest thing is probably 60 FPS. Considering every Mario game since Galaxy and even Sunshine was planned to run at 60 before launch, I don't see them going away from this, but if they did, it would be awful. Another thing that was great is photo mode, which lets you take pictures with weird filters. The online leaderboard mode was also cool, so I hope they have something similar in their next game, with new minigames or a new Luigi mode or something. Imagine if we got the Chimp Challenge again from Galaxy 2 but with online support. And lastly, the costumes. Having costumes again would be great. So what are your thoughts on my suggestions? Do you agree, or do you have any different hopes for the next Mario game? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.